Hey everyone, today is September 14th, and we celebrate on this day the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross. It's actually a big feast in our liturgical year. And it's because the cross is important for us as Christians. It's because the cross is where we see our salvation. And I want to talk about the cross as a reminder for us in a couple of different ways. First, it's a reminder to us of what our salvation looks like, that it came about through the suffering of the Lord, and that we have to look at that salvation, that it's important for us to see that. Not that it's important for us to see something that looks really hideous or painful, but to remind us that that's what it took, that Jesus suffered for our salvation. And like the Israelites in the desert, who we hear about in our first reading today, who had to look at the bronze serpent mounted on a pole to be cured from the bites of the venomous snakes. See, God didn't just take away the snakes, but he allowed them by looking. It was kind of their conscious choice now that they had to look now at this bronze serpent, that they would be healed. Same is true for us, that God doesn't take away temptation, and he doesn't take away all of these things that are bad in the world necessarily. But what he does do is he offers us something, a symbol to show us how we can be free, how we can be healed. The next is that we see that through the cross, Jesus shows us what it looks like to gain victory over the evil. And that by what he does with that is he's obedient to the point of death. That really the great power that we have as Christians does not come from ourselves, but from another, from Jesus, from the Father who Jesus was obedient to, that really his power comes through his obedience and his weakness. And that's what was kind of played out in the second reading, this great Christian hymn from St. Paul that says, though he was in the form of God, Jesus did not deem equality with God something to be grasped. He didn't hold on to this immortal, godly state, but he allowed himself to become human, a slave like us, to everything but sin. And he was obedient to the point of death on a cross. The cross is important for us because it reminds us of who we are and what our lives should look like, that we should cling to that weakness, not because weakness is a virtue in itself, but because through our weakness, through the power of the cross, we see where our true strength comes from, that it allows God to work in the midst of that weakness, that as we are more and more surrendered to him, our lives become more and more like Jesus, and we win victory over evil. And finally, the cross shows us what it looks like to be small, to be little. I think that's something that we could all work on. Sometimes I want to just control everything in my life, and I want to be the one in charge, and Jesus on the cross shows us that true strength comes through being small, not trying to control everything, that God truly has everything in his hands. So today, let's ask the Lord to give us true victory through the cross. Let's look at the cross. If you have a crucifix in your home, take a moment today to reflect on what Jesus did for us there, because through that cross, we have salvation.